Welcome back to The Grind for a quick guide on the Inhuman Carina's challenge, where you have to complete the labyrinth with only Inhuman 4 stars. Now, Karnak is one of the better options for this since he was buffed, but he does require a few things in order to maximize his potential. One of those being to counter the opponent's special attacks or heavy attacks with his own heavy attack in order to stack up as many Furies as possible. Every time you throw the special 2, you're going to get a passive Fury. And you can pause that by countering with a heavy attack or just using a heavy attack to knock the opponent down in general. But you want to counter the opponent's heavy attack or special attack because you otherwise will consume one of those green passive charges. As you can see, we did not lose a charge when we countered his heavy attack. And then you can stack up multiple Furies if you're able to continually and frequently pause them. You can get up to 4 or 5 at a time. Now, one thing to keep in mind is if you have to parry and knock the opponent down with a heavy just so you can pause them, that's okay. You'll lose one charge, but you'll get it back without too much delay. And it's better to make sure that you keep them paused frequently so that you can stack them up. Now, one thing that makes it difficult with Karnak is sometimes it's hard to counter special attacks, as you can see. And I thought that when I actually did the run, I thought I was able to get it with a light attack to close the distance, but it wasn't actually working this second time when I went back in just to get some extra footage. So what I ended up doing was just working on baiting heavy attacks in order to counter. Now, right now I was countering the special one with heavy attacks, but I had 0 charges. It was still pausing the Furies, but I was at 0 charges, so it wasn't consuming any. But there you can see I had one, and then I knocked him down with the heavy, and it consumed it. So with certain fights, you're going to want to rely on baiting heavies in order to pause the Furies so that you can keep those charges, because if you have 3 charges, it'll really help to boost the damage that you're doing overall. But like I said, if you have to parry to knock the opponent down to pause them, it's better to pause it rather than let them expire and just let yourself consume one of those charges. Now, with Red Hulk, if you take the easier, smaller health pool fights, I did go through the middle, and so they were longer fights, and some of them were a bit challenging. But if you have someone like Red Hulk where you can counter his his special attacks, you want to make sure that you're countering it with the heavy before he recovers. And now Red Hulk, sometimes it seems like you're still countering it before he recovers, but it consumes a charge. You want to dex early. You see, before he even jumped, I dashed back a second time so that I was able to hit him with the heavy attack shortly after he landed and avoid consuming one of those charges. Another important thing to keep in mind is hitting into the block with Karnak helps you gain power. And if you're max sig, which you should be since it's a 4-star, you can put the resources in to max them out. You're going to be gaining more power hitting the block than you would just hitting into him. And in certain situations, that can be very beneficial because it gives the opponent less power, but also gives you more power, so you can really increase the amount of special attacks that you can throw. So you can see we're very consistently countering with a heavy attack without consuming any of our charges. But we're going to show an example here where if I wait until he dashes and starts jumping at me, and I do the dex back a little bit too late, then I try to counter, he actually recovers, so it does consume one of those charges. So you have to be very conscious of that. No matter which opponent you're going up against, you just have to try to counter that special attack or heavy attack before they recover. And if it's consuming a charge, you have to try to figure out a way to counter it a little bit earlier. Now, there was some fights that I did use Medusa where I could easily get up to special 3 and put on the armor shatter and stack up bleeds. But sometimes it's hard to chain on special 3s to keep the armor shatter and bleeds going. Also, going through the middle path with those larger health pools, some of the champions actually have tenacity, so you can't even get to an armor shatter because they'll just shrug off the armor breaks or the armor shatter or the bleeds. And so in those situations, it's actually better to stick with Karnak. However, if you're going up against a fight where you're having trouble countering the special attacks or baiting heavies with Karnak so you can't stack your Furies, then you might want to go with Medusa instead. So it'll just depend on what which fight you're going up against. Now, for this final Maestro boss, you want to try to get comfortable baiting out the special 1 and fully dexing it. It's similar to Mojo, where it has two beams that are close together, a short pause, and then a final beam. And if you can't get comfortable dexing it, then it can really screw you up. And also there's a nice evade where he took me out, unfortunately, right after I dexed it. Now, something that you also want to try to get comfortable doing is preventing the opponent from throwing a special attack if you're not comfortable with it. So holding block to bait a heavy attack and then pushing him up to a special 2. And that was the most consistent thing I could do against this Maestro boss, is just trying to bait heavy attacks so I could push out to a special 2 and not have to worry about getting clipped by the special 1. Another thing to consider is how you're going to go about doing this run, if you're going to go with single revives or team revives. Now, if you are going to be spending units on revives, then the team revive route is going to be a more efficient way of doing it. And then you're going to want to make sure that you have all 5 of the Inhumans at max rank, at rank 5. And otherwise, you're not going to be able to get very much damage out of the ones who are not rank 5. Now, I had saved up a ton of single revives, and so I went the route of single revives, and it did take about 90 of them with a couple team revives in order to go through the middle path. I know some people have done the outer path or a partial outer path plus inner path, and it has been about a similar amount of revive count or fight count if you consider that a team revive is worth 5 single revives. So it does take a large number of revives. I think I averaged about 10% per revive, considering in that sometimes I only got 1 or 2% taken off and then had a mistake. Well, sometimes I did get up to 20% per run, and so that's something to factor in. So I do hope that this was helpful, even though I didn't show many of the fights specifically, but hopefully that the tips and tricks from this video will help you prepare and plan for your run. Let me know what your thoughts are. If you have any additional tips, please put them in the comment section below, and I hope to see you in the next video.